She arrived at the music school early every morning, before anyone else, pushing her cleaning cart quietly down the wide hallways. The floors shone under her careful hands, and the smell of polish filled the air. Most people never noticed her, and that was just the way she liked it. She liked moving through the school quietly, doing her work without drawing attention. But the truth was, she carried a secret. She had been playing piano for as long as she could remember, learning from her mother in a small room filled with dusty old instruments. Those early days of music had been the only escape she had from the hard life at home. She had not had formal lessons like the students at the school. No one had guided her or told her she was talented. Everything she knew about music she had taught herself. She would spend hours listening to melodies and practicing with a stubborn determination. Her fingers remembered every note even before her mind did, moving with a rhythm that surprised even herself. Yet, she had never played for anyone who truly understood music. She did it for the feeling it gave her, the way it made her heart lift and her mind quiet. The school was grand, with polished floors, tall ceilings, and pianos in nearly every room. Teachers bustled through hallways, students ran from one lesson to another. And sometimes, in the midst of all the noise, she could hear someone practicing a difficult piece. Those sounds would make her pause and listen, feeling a strange mixture of envy and admiration. She had the skill, she thought, but not the recognition. That never seemed possible for someone like her. Someone who wore the uniform of the janitor and carried a mop instead of a music bag. There was one teacher, in particular, who always seemed to scowl when he saw her. He was strict and proud, known throughout the school for his incredible skill on the piano. When he entered a room, even the most confident students would straighten up. He had a sharp look, one that made people uncomfortable, and he never hesitated to voice his opinion. One morning, as she was polishing the piano in the main hall, he walked in, glancing at her with a look that made her stomach twist. "Stick to cleaning," he said without even looking at her properly. "Music is not for everyone." His voice was cold and final, like a judge delivering a sentence. He didn't see the small, worn notebook she carried with her, filled with compositions she had written in secret. He didn't notice the way her fingers itched to play, the way her heart beat faster at the sound of a piano key. To him, she was just another worker, someone who had no place in the world of music he considered sacred. She didn't respond. She never did when he spoke like that. Instead, she nodded politely and continued her work, hiding the surge of emotions inside her. Anger, disappointment, and a quiet determination to prove him wrong. He didn't know her story. He didn't know the nights she had spent with her mother, learning to play by ear, learning to feel the music in her bones. He didn't know that music was not just something she did. It was a part of who she was. It always had been, and it always would be. After he left, she walked to an empty room, a place where no one came during the day. She sat at the piano, running her fingers over the keys, and the sound filled the empty space. She played softly at first, a simple melody that carried memories of her childhood. The notes were gentle and delicate, but beneath them was a strength and a depth that only years of practice could create. The music wrapped around her like a warm blanket, protecting her from the harshness of the world outside. She closed her eyes, letting the music guide her. Each note was a word, each chord a sentence, telling a story that no one else would hear. She played faster now, the melody growing, filling the room with energy and emotion. It was as if the piano knew her secrets and was helping her tell them. For a moment, she forgot about the teacher's words, the students in their lessons, and the world outside. There was only the music and her connection to it. Sometimes, she would peek out the door, watching the students pass by, hearing the teacher continue his lessons. She imagined what it would be like if they could hear her, if they could understand the depth of her talent. She wondered what it would feel like for someone like him to hear her play and realize that he had been wrong. It was a dream she held close but never spoke about. Dreams were dangerous if they were spoken aloud, and she had learned to keep hers hidden. Her life at the school was a quiet balance. By day, she was the janitor, moving through the halls unnoticed, performing a task no one cared to remember. By night, or in the hidden corners of the school, she was a pianist, letting her soul speak through the keys. It was a life of duality, one that could not be discovered, not yet. She knew that if anyone found out too soon, there could be disbelief, judgment, or even ridicule. But still, she kept playing, kept dreaming because it was all she had. There were moments when she caught a student lingering near a piano, watching her fingers move over the keys with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. She would smile briefly and continue playing, never revealing too much. She learned to accept small glances and quiet acknowledgments as a comfort, proof that her music touched someone, even if only for a moment. It was enough to keep her going. One afternoon, the teacher came again, this time walking into the hall with his students. He stopped near the piano she was cleaning, eyes scanning the room critically. "Why are you touching that piano again?" he asked, his voice sharper this time. "You're not a student. You have no business here." She looked at him calmly, her hands resting on the polished surface. She could feel the heat rising in her chest but refused to let it show. "I'm just making sure it's clean," she said softly, the truth hidden in her tone. It was true. She was cleaning it. But the piano also waited for her in secret, ready to sing her story if given the chance. He shook his head, muttering something about wasted effort, and walked away. She exhaled slowly, feeling a mixture of relief and frustration. Why did he think music could be limited to a select few? She had felt the power of it, the way it could heal and uplift, and she knew that it was not meant to be controlled. Her music belonged to her, and one day it would be heard. After he left, she returned to the piano, sitting on the worn bench that had become her sanctuary. Her fingers danced over the keys, playing a melody that grew richer with each note. The hall, empty now, seemed to listen with her, absorbing every sound, every emotion. She allowed herself a small smile, knowing that this moment, this music, was her victory. She played until the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the floor, a silent audience to her unwavering passion. By the time she finished, her hands ached and her heart was full. She closed her eyes, letting the final notes linger in the air, carrying her dreams and memories into the quiet evening. She gathered her cleaning supplies and moved through the empty school, leaving behind the echo of her music, a whisper of something extraordinary hidden in plain sight. No one had witnessed it yet, but she knew the day would come when the world could no longer ignore her. Until then, she would keep playing, keep dreaming, and keep believing in the power of the music that lived within her. Her evenings were her own, a time when the world outside the school's walls seemed to disappear. She would return to her small apartment, a modest place with just enough room for her piano and a few pieces of furniture. It was not much, but it was hers. She would open the window, letting the cool breeze drift in, carrying the sounds of distant streets and laughter. She often thought about the students she cleaned for, the teacher who dismissed her, and the life she led in secret. Music was her refuge, her comfort, and her escape from everything that felt limiting. Her childhood had been difficult. Her parents had worked long hours and had little time for dreams, but her mother had always encouraged her to play, even if it was on a rickety old piano that barely worked. She remembered sitting on the small wooden bench, her fingers pressing down on keys that often stuck, her mother humming along beside her. Those moments were pure magic to her, a glimpse of something bigger than the world around her. Even as she grew older and life became more complicated, she carried those moments with her, holding on to them like a treasure. She had never had the chance to attend a music school or take formal lessons. Everything she learned was by listening, watching, and practicing tirelessly. She spent hours each day perfecting her technique, experimenting with melodies, and trying to capture the emotions she felt in music. Sometimes she would cry while playing, tears flowing freely as she poured her heart into each note. Other times, she would laugh, finding joy in the sound that seemed to come from deep inside her. She had kept her talent hidden because she feared rejection and ridicule. People often judged her based on her appearance and her job, never imagining that a janitor could play with such skill. The piano teacher's words echoed in her mind frequently. Stick to cleaning. It was not just a comment. It was a reflection of the world's expectations, a reminder that she was invisible in places that mattered. Yet, every time she heard that voice, it fueled her determination. She wanted to show that talent cannot be measured by a uniform or a role in society. Her favorite time to practice was late at night in the empty school halls. The students had gone home, the teachers had locked their doors, and the building was silent except for the occasional hum of a street lamp outside. She would sit at a grand piano in one of the large practice rooms, letting her fingers dance across the keys. She played pieces she had written herself, weaving emotions into every note. It was private, intimate, and entirely hers. No one could interrupt, no one could judge. Here, she was not a janitor. She was a musician. One night, as she played a particularly difficult piece, she noticed the way her fingers moved almost on their own, guided by the emotions she felt. She remembered her mother's voice encouraging her, telling her that music was a gift meant to be shared. That thought stirred something deep within her. Maybe one day, she would have the courage to share her music, to let people hear what she could do. But for now, she played for herself, for the joy, for the release, and for the memories that shaped her. Even at work, she found small ways to connect with music. She would listen quietly to students practicing, imagining herself performing their pieces with even greater skill. Sometimes, she would hum along to a melody, careful not to be noticed. Her heart would race when a student played a particularly beautiful piece, feeling a sense of camaraderie in the shared love of music. It was strange to be so close to music yet still feel distant from recognition, but she accepted it as part of her journey. Her relationship with the teacher remained complicated. He never spoke to her except to remind her of her place in the school. She could feel his disapproval every time he glanced at her, and she knew he thought little of her abilities. But she also knew that one day, those opinions would not matter. She had learned to separate her self-worth from the judgment of others, finding confidence in the music itself. Every note she played was proof of her skill and her perseverance. Outside the school, she had a small circle of friends who knew about her talent. They encouraged her, urging her to perform, to show the world what she could do. But fear held her back. She worried about rejection, about being laughed at, about being told again to stick to cleaning. The thought of stepping into a room full of people and revealing her secret made her stomach twist, but it also excited her. She knew that music was her voice, and one day she would have to speak. Her apartment was modest but filled with reminders of her passion. Sheet music stacked neatly on a small shelf, recordings of famous pianists on an old laptop, and a few photographs of concerts she had attended as a child. Each item held memories, lessons, and inspiration. She would often spend hours poring over these materials, learning new techniques, imagining new melodies, and dreaming of the day she could perform in front of an audience. Despite the challenges, she never lost hope. Every day was a step forward, every practice session a victory. She believed that talent would eventually be recognized, that skill and dedication could not remain hidden forever. She held onto that belief like a lifeline, a promise to herself that her music would one day be heard and appreciated. She often imagined what it would be like to play in front of the teacher, to prove that he had been wrong to underestimate her. The thought brought a mix of excitement and fear. She imagined his face when he realized that the janitor he dismissed could play with such skill and emotion. It was a private fantasy, one that motivated her to practice even harder. She played with purpose, pouring her energy and passion into every key. Her secret life as a musician was a delicate balance. By day, she moved through the halls unnoticed, performing her cleaning duties with quiet efficiency. By night, she became a pianist, letting her soul speak through the instrument. It was a life of duality, full of longing and determination, and she had learned to navigate it with patience and care. Every day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to grow and refine her craft. One evening, after finishing her practice, she sat quietly at the piano, reflecting on her journey. She thought about her childhood, the encouragement of her mother, the struggles she had faced, and the quiet victories she had achieved. Music had been her constant companion, her solace, and her source of strength. She knew that it would continue to guide her, even when the world seemed indifferent or dismissive. She realized that her talent was not just about playing notes or performing pieces. It was about expression, emotion, and connection. Music was a way to communicate what words could not capture. It allowed her to share a part of herself without speaking, to reach others in a way that transcended barriers. This understanding gave her a sense of purpose and a deeper appreciation for the art she loved. As she packed up her things to leave the school, she felt a quiet determination. She would continue to practice, to dream, and to prepare for the day when her music could be shared with the world. She knew it would not be easy, and she knew there would be obstacles along the way. But she also knew that she had something special, a gift that could not be ignored forever. And so, she walked through the empty halls, leaving behind the echoes of her music, carrying with her the hope and determination that would guide her journey into the next chapter of her life. The day of the school recital arrived, bringing a buzz of excitement and nervous energy through the music school. Students rushed through the hallways, tuning their instruments, practicing last-minute scales, and whispering encouragement to each other. Teachers moved between rooms, making final notes and giving advice. The janitor moved quietly among them, pushing her cart, cleaning as usual, but her heart beat a little faster than normal. Something in the air felt different. Today was not just another day. There was a sense that change could come, though she could not yet see how. She watched from a distance as the students she had seen practicing for months prepared to perform in front of an audience. They were confident, polished, and ready. The piano teacher paced near the stage, checking details and ensuring everything was perfect. He glanced around the hall, his eyes briefly landing on her, and he shook his head. "Remember your place," he muttered under his breath, and she felt a small pang of frustration, but she kept moving, pretending she had not heard. As she cleaned, she noticed some students lingering near her, glancing at her with curiosity. They had seen her practicing in empty rooms, heard faint notes drifting down the halls, and wondered about the mysterious janitor who seemed to have a connection with the music that no one could explain. One of them whispered to another, "Do you think she can really play?" They giggled, unsure whether it was serious or a joke. She smiled faintly but did not respond, letting the mystery remain. The thought of them knowing her secret both excited and frightened her. Suddenly, one of the students jokingly suggested to the others, "Why don't we get her to play, just for fun?" The idea spread like wildfire, and soon there was a small group talking about it quietly but excitedly. She overheard the conversation and froze for a moment. Her heart skipped a beat. The idea of performing in front of the teacher, the students, and eventually the audience was terrifying. She had never played for anyone outside her small private space. But she also felt a strange thrill. Maybe this was the moment she had been waiting for, though she had not known it until now. The teacher called everyone to the stage, and the students began performing their pieces one by one. Each performance was met with polite applause, and she moved about the hall, cleaning as if she were completely detached, though her mind was racing. She could feel the energy building, the anticipation, and the nervous excitement of the audience. She watched as the teacher nodded with approval at each student, giving small words of encouragement, but his eyes never left the stage entirely. She felt a mixture of fear and determination rising inside her. A student finally turned to her and said, "Why don't you play something? Just one piece." There was a mix of teasing and genuine curiosity in the voice. The others nodded, encouraging her. She hesitated, unsure if she could face the possibility of embarrassment or ridicule. But then she remembered the nights she had spent in empty rooms, the hours of practice, the dreams that had carried her this far. She realized that this was a chance to show, even if only for a moment, the skill and passion she had kept hidden for so long. Taking a deep breath, she approached the piano. The audience noticed her movement, and a murmur spread through the hall. The students who had been practicing on stage looked at her with surprise. The teacher's eyes widened slightly in disbelief. He had always dismissed her, never imagining that the janitor who walked quietly through his hallways could perform anything at all. Yet here she was, walking toward the piano with quiet confidence, carrying years of hidden talent in her hands. She sat on the bench, feeling the smooth keys under her fingers. Her heart raced, but she focused on the familiar feel of the piano, the texture of the keys, and the memories of every note she had practiced in secret. The room fell silent, as if waiting with her. She began softly, a gentle melody that seemed simple at first, but carried an emotion that touched everyone listening. It was not just about the notes. It was about the story she was telling, a story of years of passion, patience, and perseverance. The melody grew stronger, more complex, as she let her emotions guide her hands. Her fingers moved effortlessly, dancing across the keys with precision and feeling. The students on stage paused in awe, and the teacher stopped pacing, staring in disbelief. No one had expected such skill, such depth, to emerge from someone they had underestimated. The hall was filled with music that spoke louder than words, silencing doubt and disbelief. The audience began to lean in, drawn into the performance. Parents, students, and staff were captivated by the unexpected talent in front of them. The melody flowed through the room, rising and falling like waves, carrying the listener through a journey of emotion. She closed her eyes, losing herself in the music, forgetting the audience, forgetting the fear, forgetting the years of doubt. For this moment she was free. The teacher finally understood. The pride he had felt in his own students, the confidence he had in his judgments, all seemed small in comparison to the skill and passion displayed by the janitor. He had judged her without truly knowing her, without ever giving her the chance to prove herself. His eyes softened, a mixture of regret and awe reflecting in them. He realized that he had underestimated her, and the realization was both humbling and shocking. As she played, the music became more intricate, each note more daring than the last. Her story unfolded through every chord and scale, revealing the years of practice, the hardships, and the quiet determination that had carried her this far. The audience was silent, caught in the spell of the music. Some had tears in their eyes, moved by the unexpected beauty and emotion. Every note told a story. Every chord spoke of perseverance and hidden talent. She played not for recognition, but because it was her voice, her way of communicating with the world. When the piece came to an end, there was a moment of stillness. The hall held its breath, waiting for someone to react. Then, slowly, applause began, growing louder and louder until the entire audience was on its feet. Cheers and claps filled the room, a sound she had never heard directed at her before. The teacher stood silently for a moment, then joined in, clapping with a mix of admiration and remorse. The students who had doubted her now looked at her with newfound respect. She smiled faintly, feeling a sense of accomplishment she had never experienced before. It was not about fame or recognition. It was about finally being seen, finally being heard, and proving to herself that her dedication and love for music were real and powerful. For years, she had played in secret, hidden from the world, and now, for the first time, her music had reached the hearts of others. The fear, the doubt, and the hesitation faded, replaced by a quiet joy and confidence. After leaving the stage, she returned to her cleaning duties, her heart still racing, but with a newfound sense of purpose. She moved through the hallways with a different energy, feeling lighter, freer, and more certain of her place in the world. She knew this was only the beginning. The experience had opened a door, not just for recognition, but for the realization that she had the power to shape her own destiny. Music had always been her companion, and now it had become her bridge to the world around her. That night, as the school emptied and the lights dimmed, she stayed behind, sitting at the piano in the empty hall. She played softly, letting the emotions of the day flow through her. She thought about the teacher, the students, and the audience, and she realized that perceptions could change, that talent could shine even in unexpected places. Her journey had just begun, and the world, finally, had a glimpse of the extraordinary musician who had been quietly living among them. She sat at the piano, taking a deep breath, feeling the smooth surface beneath her fingers. The hall was silent, every eye on her, every whisper of movement stilled. For a moment, she felt her nerves, a small flutter in her chest, but she pushed it aside. She had done this countless times alone, but now it was different. Now, she had an audience that expected nothing, yet would see everything. She let her hands settle on the keys and began to play, softly at first, as if testing the waters. The sound was gentle, almost a whisper, but it carried emotion that reached every corner of the hall. The melody was simple at first, flowing naturally, as if it had always existed and she was only revealing it. She closed her eyes, letting the music guide her, letting the years of practice and hidden dreams pour out through her fingers. Every note was deliberate, every chord held meaning, telling a story that words could never express. She imagined herself back in the small rooms of her childhood, her mother humming along, her tiny hands pressing down on keys that were never quite perfect. That memory gave her strength, and she played with more confidence, more clarity. The students and teachers watched in silence. Some were leaning forward, trying to catch every nuance of her performance. Some simply stared, mouths slightly open in disbelief. The teacher, who had always dismissed her, now stood frozen, his arms crossed but his eyes wide. He could hear the skill, the emotion, and the years of dedication that had gone into every note. He realized he had been wrong, that his assumptions about her were foolish and unjust. She was not just a janitor. She was a musician, a true artist whose talent demanded recognition. The melody began to grow, building in strength and complexity. Her fingers moved effortlessly, dancing across the keys with precision and passion. The audience could feel the music, the story unfolding before them. She was telling them about her journey, the long hours of practice, the nights spent alone, the dreams that had carried her through difficult times. Every chord was an expression of her heart, every scale a reflection of her soul. It was as if the piano had become an extension of herself, translating her emotions into sound. The hall was captivated. Some students had tears in their eyes, moved by the beauty and emotion of her playing. Parents and teachers alike felt the impact of the music, sensing the years of dedication and hidden talent that had gone unnoticed for so long. The applause she received after each phrase was spontaneous, almost instinctive, a recognition of something rare and extraordinary. The teacher finally unclenched his arms, his hands trembling slightly as he realized the depth of his mistake. He had underestimated her, and now he could do nothing but watch as she proved him wrong. As she continued, the piece grew more intricate. She added flourishes, daring transitions, and subtle pauses that made the music alive and breathing. The rhythm shifted, the tempo changed, and yet every note was controlled, deliberate, and beautiful. It was a masterful performance, one that could have been given by any trained professional. Yet it came from someone who had learned in secret, from pure determination and passion. The audience felt the energy, the emotion, and the artistry that she had brought into the room. She opened her eyes briefly and scanned the crowd. She could see the astonishment, the admiration, and the newfound respect in their faces. The teacher's expression had softened completely, replaced with awe and perhaps a hint of regret. The students who had doubted her now looked at her with eyes full of wonder, understanding that talent could be found in unexpected places. Her heart swelled with a quiet pride, not from the applause, but from the recognition that she had finally shared her truth. The piece reached its climax, with rapid runs of notes cascading like a waterfall, yet controlled and precise. The emotion was palpable, a mixture of joy, sorrow, triumph, and vulnerability. She played with every ounce of energy she had, her body moving naturally to the rhythm, her fingers executing every detail with skill and passion. It was not just a performance. It was a revelation, a statement that talent cannot be measured by appearances or titles. The music carried her story into the hearts of every person in the hall. When she finally brought the piece to its conclusion, the hall remained silent for a brief, breathtaking moment. No one moved, no one spoke, as if they were savoring the final note, letting it linger in the air. Then, gradually, applause began, small at first, then growing louder and louder until the entire hall erupted in cheers and clapping. People were on their feet, shouting and cheering, moved by the performance they had just witnessed. The energy in the room was electric, a mixture of amazement, admiration, and celebration. The teacher walked forward, his eyes glistening with emotion. He extended his hand toward her, a gesture of respect and apology. I was wrong, he said softly, his voice filled with sincerity. I should have never doubted you. Your talent is incredible. She nodded quietly, accepting the acknowledgement without words. She had not played to prove him right or wrong. She had played because it was her voice, her story, and now it had been heard. The students gathered around her, asking questions, complimenting her skill, and expressing their amazement. She smiled, feeling a sense of connection and validation she had never experienced before. It was not about fame or recognition, but about the acknowledgement of her years of dedication, the value of her passion, and the joy that music could bring to both the player and the listener. She felt seen, understood, and appreciated in a way she had only dreamed of. After the applause died down, she continued to play, softly this time, sharing another melody that was more intimate, more personal. It was a song that told her story without words, filled with memories, hopes, and dreams. The audience listened in silence, drawn into the emotion, feeling the depth of her journey. Even the teacher, who had been her harshest critic, watched with a newfound admiration, realizing that music could break barriers and reveal truths that words could not. By the time she finished, the hall was filled with a quiet reverence, punctuated by sporadic applause. People were still absorbing what they had witnessed, understanding that something extraordinary had just happened. She stood, acknowledging the audience with a humble nod, her heart full and her mind at peace. She had shared her gift, her passion, and her story, and the world had finally seen her not as a janitor, but as a musician of remarkable talent. After leaving the stage, she returned to her cleaning duties, moving through the hallways with a sense of calm and purpose. She smiled softly, feeling a deep satisfaction that could not be measured by applause or recognition. She had proven to herself that her dedication and love for music were powerful and real. The teacher watched her quietly, no words needed, as he understood the magnitude of what had just occurred. He had been reminded that talent and passion cannot be judged by appearance or position. That night, when the hall emptied and the lights dimmed, she stayed behind, sitting at the piano in solitude. She played softly, letting the emotions of the day flow through her once more. The memory of the audience, the applause, and the teacher's acknowledgement filled her with warmth and hope. She realized that this moment was not an end, but a beginning. She had taken the first step toward sharing her music with the world, and she knew that there would be more opportunities, more chances to inspire and move others with her gift. She played until the last note faded, leaving a quiet echo in the empty hall. The music carried her dreams, her memories, and her determination, a reminder that perseverance and passion could overcome doubt and limitation. She packed up her belongings slowly, savoring the moment and the journey she had taken. She walked through the empty hallways, leaving behind the sounds of her music and carrying with her the knowledge that she had finally claimed her place, not just as a janitor, but as a true musician whose talent would not be ignored. The applause had barely faded when the whispers started. Students and teachers alike were talking quietly, still trying to process what they had just witnessed. Some shook their heads in disbelief, murmuring to one another that no one had expected such skill from someone they had overlooked for so long. Parents who had come to see their children perform were now sharing looks of amazement, talking about the depth of emotion and mastery in the janitor's playing. She moved quietly among them, returning to her cleaning tasks, feeling a strange mixture of humility and pride. The teacher approached her, his expression unreadable at first, but there was something new in his eyes, a respect that had never been there before. "I can't believe I underestimated you," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "You have a gift that cannot be ignored. I apologize for doubting you." She nodded quietly, letting the words sink in. She did not need him to apologize to feel validated. The performance had already done that. But hearing it, nonetheless, carried a strange weight, a sense that her efforts had finally been recognized by someone who had authority and knowledge in the world of music. Students gathered around her, some still wide-eyed, some smiling, others in awe. They asked her questions not about her job, but about her music, her techniques, and how she had learned to play so well. She answered softly, never boasting, but sharing a little about her journey. She told them about the long nights of practice, the quiet moments alone with her piano, and the dreams she had held close for years. The students listened intently, realizing that talent can exist in the most unexpected places, and that it is nurtured through dedication and passion. Her co-workers, other staff members who had worked alongside her without realizing the depth of her talent, now looked at her with newfound respect. Some had heard rumors about her ability but dismissed them as exaggeration. Now there was no doubt. She had proven that her skill was real, extraordinary, and deserving of recognition. She felt a warmth in her chest, knowing that her perseverance had not gone unnoticed. The audience slowly began to approach her, complimenting her performance and expressing amazement at what they had seen. Parents, students, and teachers alike wanted to shake her hand, to acknowledge the impact of her music. She felt overwhelmed, a mixture of gratitude and humility. She smiled, thanked them quietly, and allowed herself to feel the recognition she had long deserved. Her music had spoken for her, and it had reached the hearts of everyone present. The teacher suggested something she had never expected, that she consider teaching or performing more publicly. "You have a talent that others need to see and hear," he said gently. "Have you ever thought about sharing your music beyond the school?" The question made her pause. It had been a secret passion, something she had kept hidden for fear of ridicule or judgment. But now, hearing it from someone who understood the value of her skill, she felt a spark of possibility. Perhaps there was a world beyond the walls of this school where her music could be heard. Her mind wandered to the idea of performing for larger audiences, of teaching students who could benefit from her knowledge, of sharing the joy of music with people who had never imagined her hidden talent. It was an exciting thought, yet also a frightening one. She had spent so many years in the shadows, unnoticed and unacknowledged, that stepping into the light felt both thrilling and intimidating. But the performance had given her confidence, proof that her music could move others, that her talent was real and powerful. Over the next few days, the school was abuzz with conversation about the performance. Students who had once overlooked her now approached her with respect, eager to learn and inspired by her dedication. Teachers discussed her skill with colleagues, marveling at the depth of her talent and the emotion she brought to every note. Even those who had doubted her began to see her in a new light, understanding that greatness can sometimes come from unexpected places. She found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She thought about her childhood, the encouragement of her mother, the hours of solitary practice, and the secret dreams that had carried her through difficult times. Every challenge, every discouraging word, and every moment of doubt had shaped her into the musician she had become. She realized that her perseverance had been her greatest strength, allowing her to transform passion into mastery despite the obstacles in her path. Opportunities began to emerge slowly but surely. Some students invited her to join small performances, to demonstrate techniques in lessons, or to collaborate on music projects. While she had never sought recognition, she found herself cautiously exploring these possibilities. Each new opportunity brought both excitement and nervousness, but she welcomed them, knowing that her music had the power to inspire and connect with others. The teacher, now a mentor in a sense, offered guidance and encouragement. He provided feedback, suggestions for refining her technique, and advice on sharing her music more broadly. She listened carefully, appreciating his expertise while maintaining her own voice and style. The relationship was no longer one of judgment, but of mutual respect, and it provided her with a sense of validation and support she had not experienced before. Her evenings continued to be spent in practice, but now they felt different. There was a sense of purpose beyond personal satisfaction. She played not just for herself, but for the audience she hoped to reach, for the students who might learn from her, and for the music itself. The piano remained her sanctuary, but it had also become a bridge, connecting her to the world and allowing her passion to resonate beyond the quiet corners she had once occupied. She began to understand that recognition was not just about applause or admiration. It was about sharing her gift, inspiring others, and embracing the possibilities that came with stepping forward. The journey had been long and often lonely, but it had prepared her for this moment of acknowledgement and the new opportunities it would bring. She felt a renewed sense of confidence and determination, ready to explore what lay ahead. The response from the school community continued to grow. Teachers invited her to workshops, students sought guidance, and parents expressed gratitude for the inspiration she had provided. Her performance had created a ripple effect, showing that talent and dedication can emerge in anyone, regardless of their role or background. It was a lesson in humility, perseverance, and the power of following one's passion. She also noticed a change in herself. The fear and hesitation that had once held her back were gradually replaced by courage and self-assurance. She realized that her music was a voice, a means of expressing emotions and stories that words could not capture. The experience had shown her that her talent mattered, that it could touch others, and that she had the ability to shape her own path. As she moved through the school, continuing her work and engaging with the students and staff, she felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. Her music had opened doors, created connections, and established her as someone whose passion and skill could no longer be overlooked. The journey was far from over, but she had taken a significant step forward, embracing the possibilities that lay ahead. In quiet moments, she would sit at the piano, reflecting on the transformation in her life. She thought about the initial doubt, the long hours of practice, and the performance that had changed everything. She realized that recognition was not the ultimate goal. It was a byproduct of dedication, love for the craft, and the courage to share one's gift with the world. Her story was a testament to perseverance, reminding her that even in the face of doubt and dismissal, passion and commitment can create extraordinary outcomes. She continued to play, letting her music fill the empty halls, carrying the echoes of her journey, her dreams, and her resilience. Every note was a reminder of how far she had come and how much more she could achieve. The recognition she had received was meaningful, but it was the understanding of her own worth and the impact of her music that mattered most. She had finally found her place, not just as a janitor or a hidden musician, but as an artist whose talent could inspire, move, and connect with others in profound ways. With each passing day, the opportunities grew. Invitations to perform at small events, collaborations with students, and recognition from other music teachers began to shape a new chapter in her life. She approached these experiences with humility and enthusiasm, eager to continue sharing her gift. Her journey was no longer solitary. It had expanded to include a community that appreciated, respected, and supported her talent. She realized that her perseverance, patience, and passion had not only defined her music, but had also carved a path for the future she had once only dreamed about. The days that followed felt calmer, yet fuller, as if the school itself had changed its mood. The halls sounded the same, the floors still needed cleaning, and the pianos still waited in their rooms, but something was different. People smiled at her now. Some nodded with quiet respect. Others stopped to say a few kind words. She accepted it all gently, never letting it go to her head. She still arrived early, pushed her cart, and did her work with the same care as before. But inside, she felt stronger, more certain of who she was. She continued practicing every day. Music was still her anchor. Even with new attention and encouragement, she did not rush. She knew that true growth came from patience. Each evening, she sat at the piano and played, not to impress, but to stay connected to the reason she began in the first place. Music was not a ladder to climb. It was a place to stand. It grounded her, reminded her of her roots, and kept her humble. Students began asking if she could listen to them play. At first, she was unsure. She had never thought of herself as someone who could guide others. But when she offered small suggestions, simple tips from her own experience, she saw their faces light up. They understood her explanations because they were honest and simple. She did not speak in fancy terms. She spoke from feeling. Slowly, without realizing it, she became someone they trusted. The teacher watched this from a distance. He saw how naturally she connected with the students, how calmly she explained things, and how deeply she understood music beyond technique. One afternoon, he asked if she would consider helping with a small practice group. The question surprised her. She took a moment before answering, then agreed quietly. It felt like a step forward, not away from who she was, but toward who she had always been inside. Balancing her work was not easy. She still needed her job and she respected it. Cleaning had taught her discipline, patience, and humility. She did not see it as something beneath her. It was part of her story. But now, music was no longer hidden in corners. It lived openly beside her daily work. She learned that it was possible to honor where you come from while still growing into something new. One evening, after the school had emptied, she sat alone at the piano and thought about her mother. She imagined how proud she would have been, how she would have listened quietly with a soft smile. That thought filled her eyes with tears, not of sadness, but of gratitude. Every note she played that night was a thank you, for the encouragement, the early lessons, and the belief that had been planted long ago. Word of her talent slowly traveled beyond the school. Nothing dramatic, nothing rushed. Just quiet conversations, shared videos, and genuine interest. A small community center invited her to play one evening. She almost said no. The old fear tried to return. But then she remembered the first time she had stepped forward at the school, and how that moment had changed everything. She said yes. The performance was simple. A small room, a modest piano, and a small audience. But the connection was real. People listened closely. Some closed their eyes. Some smiled. Some wiped tears. When she finished, the applause was warm and honest. It reminded her that music did not need grand stages to matter. It only needed open hearts. After that, she no longer doubted herself the way she used to. Doubt still came, but it no longer controlled her. She understood that fear was part of growth, not a sign to stop. Every time she played, she felt more comfortable being seen, not as someone special or above others, but as someone sharing something true. Back at the school, the atmosphere continued to change. Students treated her differently, not because she demanded it, but because respect had grown naturally. The teacher, too, changed. He listened more. He judged less. He had learned something important, not just about music, but about people. He understood that talent does not follow titles or uniforms. She never forgot the words that had once hurt her, but they no longer held power. Instead, they served as a reminder of how easy it is to misunderstand others, and how important it is to stay kind and open. She promised herself she would never make someone feel small the way she once had. Her life did not suddenly become perfect. There were still tired days, still worries, still moments of uncertainty. But now there was also clarity. She knew who she was. She was someone who loved music deeply, who worked hard, and who had the courage to step forward when the moment came. Late one night, she walked through the quiet halls one last time before locking up. The lights were dim, and the building felt peaceful. She paused at the piano in the main hall and played a few soft notes. The sound echoed gently, not loud, not dramatic, just honest. It felt like a full circle moment, from silence to sound, from hidden to seen. She smiled to herself, not because she had proven anyone wrong, but because she had finally listened to herself. Her journey had never been about revenge or pride. It had been about truth, about honoring a gift and allowing it to grow. As she turned off the lights and stepped outside, the night air felt fresh. The future was still unknown, but it no longer frightened her. Whatever came next, she would meet it the same way she met the piano each day, with patience, heart, and quiet strength. Her story was not about a janitor who surprised a school. It was about a person who refused to let a single role define her. It was about the power of persistence, the beauty of humility, and the way passion can survive even when unseen. And most of all, it was a reminder that sometimes The most powerful voices are the ones that have waited the longest to be heard.